So, risk assessments, we say that and a lot of people panic. It is something that we know volunteers are conscious of doing, but there is no need to be. A risk assessment is there to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that the people that attend our activities are safe. It doesn't mean that you need to think of every single eventuality, like an alien invasion or, a big sinkhole outside the front of your meeting place. It's just about taking reasonable caution. So the difference between a hazard and a risk is a hazard is only a hazard if there is some sort of human interaction, and that's when it becomes a risk. So a hazard could be a chair. A chair is always a hazard, but it's absolutely fine until there's some interaction with a human being. And if that chair is put in the way of a walking route, then it becomes a risk because someone might trip over it and hurt themselves. So it's about thinking in depth about how your meeting is set up or your activity. If it's an exercise class, you might do a quick risk assessment of the venue and then liaise with the instructor themselves to make sure that they've got a risk assessment in place for their activities that they're providing, the exercises they're providing, or if they're a singing teacher, what they're instructing. And we've put together guidance for you that explains in detail how this works. And that has a table for you to think through each of your activities and nail down any risks that there might be. So the best way to think about it is to start from the start, funnily enough, and think about, right, when people are turning up, they're coming into the car park, what are the issues here? Okay, there's a pothole in the car park, or there's a number of potholes in the car park. What can we do to mitigate that risk if people are walking from their cars to the building? Well, we can send out an email or let them know when they join. The ground on the car park is quite uneven. Just be careful, make sure you mind your step, keep an eye out for it, and we might decide that we'll remind that quarterly. There, you've mitigated your risk. So rather than not telling anyone, you know that you've done something to try and avoid anything bad happening because of those potholes. You might then move on to, right, the door. Actually, the door's really, really heavy. And if people with Parkinson's are going to struggle, then, we might need to do something about that. Okay, what can we do to mitigate that risk? We can make sure the door's propped open as people come in and out. Therefore, it's not going to swing shut and hurt someone who perhaps doesn't have the strength to hold it open. You then might move into, then we do our refreshments. Okay, teas and coffees. How can we mitigate that? Well, we'll make sure we have the proper thermal cups so that no one burns themselves. And you go through the activity and think about everything you do and what could go wrong within reason. And just think about what you can do to try and stop that thing going wrong. It's very straightforward, and you don't need to do it every single time. You might do it once a year and get that formally written down, and you review that and revisit it on an annual basis. But when you go in, you just have a quick scan around, and we all do it automatically. We all do risk assessments in our heads without them officially being risk assessments. But you might go in one week and see that actually there's a dodgy floorboard over there. It's come up, it's buckled, and that's going to be a trip hazard. So then you're in your head, you're risk assessing this, and at the start of the meeting you say, we've put some cones out around a floorboard over there, try and avoid it, we don't want you to trip. And then you would go a bit further, and the next step you would take is go and report it to the venue and get them to do something about it, and just make a note that you've done that somewhere. And all of this helps to assess that risk. It sounds very, very strict and formal, but it doesn't need to be. And in terms of liability, if someone does make a claim against the charity, then the first thing the insurance company will do is say, well, was there a risk assessment? Did we do everything we could to stop this happening? And if it is something like, they tripped over that floorboard and we've got a note of it, absolutely fine. If it is that they fell in the car park down a pothole, and you can say, well, we risk assess this and we tell people about it quarterly. We just remind them at the meeting. Absolutely fine. You will not be liable, and you won't be liable if there's something not on that risk assessment that you've missed, because everyone misses things and you cannot predict everything. So don't panic, just do your best and make sure you revisit it so that we've got evidence that you have given it some thought. And if you're ever not sure, you know, if you ever wonder whether the risk is so severe that perhaps you need to cancel, ask us, ask your local staff contact or me. I'm Annabel in the local networks team. You know, you can contact me on localnetworks@parkinsons.org.uk and we'll help you through. We'll look over that until you've got the hang of it, and we're more than happy to help. But please don't worry, it's better that you do it than not at all.